The forest has always been my sanctuary, a place where the world fades and the quiet hum of nature takes over. I built my cabin deep in the woods, far from the noise of the city, seeking solitude. But one morning, solitude was the last thing I found. It started with a sound, a soft rhythmic tapping on my porch. I figured it was a woodpecker, maybe a squirrel with an acorn. But when I peered through the window, my heart nearly stopped. Standing there, no taller than my waist, was a creature I'd only read about in folklore and seen in grainy, debated photographs. It was covered in shaggy, dark brown fur, its large, dark eyes wide with an intelligence that was unmistakably not animalistic. It looked like a child, a baby Bigfoot. My first instinct was pure disbelief, followed by a surge of fear. But then I looked into its eyes again. There was no menace, only a desperate, pleading look. It tapped the porch rail again, then gestured with a small, furred hand towards the deep woods. It wanted me to follow. Every rational thought in my head screamed at me to stay inside, to lock the doors and pretend I'd seen nothing. But my curiosity and a strange sense of empathy won out. I slowly opened the door. The little creature backed away, giving me space, but kept its eyes locked on mine, periodically glancing back towards the forest. It was an invitation, a clear one. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed my sturdy hiking boots and a small day pack, stuffing it with a first aid kit, water, and my phone, though I knew service was non-existent out here. I stepped onto the porch. "Okay," I whispered, more to myself than to it. "Okay, I'm coming." The little one let out a soft, chuffing sound, almost like a sigh of relief, and turned, leading the way. We moved through the forest, off any trail I had ever made or followed. It moved with a natural grace, navigating the thick underbrush with an ease I could only envy. It would pause every so often, looking back to make sure I was still with it. Its big eyes a constant reassurance. The forest floor was a tapestry of moss and fallen leaves, the air thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. I tried to memorize our path, noting oddly shaped trees and rock formations, but soon I was completely disoriented, relying entirely on my small furry guide. Hours seemed to pass. The sun climbed higher, casting dappled light through the dense canopy. I was starting to feel the strain, my legs aching, but the little creature showed no signs of fatigue. It just kept moving with a quiet determination. Its purpose was so clear, it gave me strength. I wondered what could be so important that it would seek out a human, breaking a secrecy its kind must have held for centuries. Was it a trap? Was I being led to a larger, less friendly group? The thought sent a shiver down my spine, but one look at my small guide, who had stopped to patiently wait for me to catch my breath, and the fear subsided. There was no malice in this little being. Finally, we arrived at a part of the forest I had never seen, a hidden valley cradled between two steep, rocky ridges. A stream gurgled nearby, and the air felt different, ancient and still. The little one stopped at the entrance to a shallow cave, partially hidden by a curtain of hanging moss. It looked back at me, its expression more urgent than ever, and let out a series of low, whimpering calls. Then it pushed aside the moss and disappeared inside. I hesitated for only a moment before following it into the dim light of the cave. The air inside was cool and smelled of earth and something else, something faintly metallic. As my eyes adjusted, I saw him. Lying on a bed of leaves and moss was a much larger Bigfoot, presumably the little one's father. His massive leg was caught in a rusty, cruel-looking bear trap, the kind that had been outlawed decades ago. The metal teeth had bitten deep into his flesh, and the area around it was swollen and dark. His breathing was shallow, his huge eyes glazed with pain. He was weak, too weak to free himself. The baby creature nudged its father's arm, letting out soft, mournful coos. Now I understood. They needed my help. My fear was completely gone, replaced by a wave of compassion and a surge of adrenaline. I knelt, trying to get a closer look. The adult Bigfoot flinched, a low growl rumbling in his chest, but the little one placed a hand on his arm and made a series of calming sounds. It was incredible. It was like he was telling his father that I was here to help. I looked at the trap. It was old and powerful. There was no way I could open it with my bare hands. I quickly unpacked my bag. The first aid kit was useless against this, but maybe. I had a small multi-tool with a pair of pliers. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I spoke to them in a calm, steady voice. "I'm going to try to get this off," I said, pointing at the trap. "It's going to hurt, but I need you to stay still." I don't know if he understood my words, but he seemed to understand my intent. He laid his head back down, his eyes watching my every move. I worked on the trap's spring mechanism with the pliers, my hands shaking. The metal was rusted tight. It took all my strength, leveraging a nearby rock to get more purchase. Sweat poured down my face. The little one watched, its knuckles white as it clenched its hands. Finally, with a loud, groaning snap, the jaws of the trap sprang open. The big male let out a roar of pain as the pressure was released, but he didn't move. I quickly pulled the trap away, tossing it as far as I could. The wound was deep and ugly. I knew it needed to be cleaned. I took out my water bottle and the antiseptic wipes from my first aid kit. "This is going to sting," I warned again. I gently cleaned the wound as best I could. The big creature winced but remained still, his trust absolute. I wrapped the leg with the cleanest strips of cloth I could find in my pack. It was a makeshift solution, but it was better than nothing. When I was done, I sat back, exhausted. The big male slowly, carefully, pushed himself up to a sitting position. He looked at his freed leg, then at me. He reached out with a hand the size of a dinner plate and gently touched my shoulder. It wasn't a push or a pat. It was a gesture of profound gratitude. His eyes, now clear and focused, held a depth of emotion that took my breath away. The little one scrambled onto his lap, nuzzling into his chest, looking at me with pure, unadulterated relief. I had done it. I had helped them. The father then did something that truly astounded me. He reached into a small nook in the cave wall and pulled out a smooth, beautifully polished river stone shaped almost like a heart. He held it out to me in his open palm. It was a gift, a thank you. I took it, my fingers brushing against his. The stone was warm to the touch. I knew in that moment that this was more than just a rock. It was a symbol, a memory of this unbelievable day. I stayed with them a little longer, watching as the little one brought his father water from the stream in cupped hands. The bond between them was so pure, so loving. As dusk began to settle, I knew I had to leave. I gestured back the way we came. I have to go home now. The big male nodded slowly. The little one, my guide, hopped off his father's lap and stood before me. He didn't lead me this time. Instead, the father let out a series of deep, resonant calls that echoed through the valley. A few moments later, another large Bigfoot, a female I presumed was the mother, emerged from the trees. She looked at me, then at her partner's bandaged leg, and her eyes softened. The family was reunited. The little one took my hand, his small fingers wrapping around mine, and led me to the edge of the valley, pointing me in the exact direction of my cabin. I made my way back through the twilight, my heart full. I didn't need to worry about getting lost. It felt as if the forest itself was guiding me home. When I finally saw the light of my cabin porch, I felt a mix of relief and a strange sadness that it was over. I've never told anyone this story. Who would believe me? But every morning I look at that smooth, heart-shaped stone sitting on my windowsill. It's a constant reminder that the world is so much bigger, so much more mysterious and magical than we can ever imagine, and that sometimes the greatest discoveries are found when you're brave enough to follow a stranger into the woods. Thank you so much for watching and for letting me share this incredible experience with you. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more adventures. Stay curious, everyone.